The keepers who stayed. How zookeepers protected life in humanity's darkest hours. When war arrives, cities change overnight. Streetlights go dark. Windows shatter. Families flee carrying whatever they can hold in their arms. And behind cracked walls and twisted iron gates, animals wait in confusion. A tiger hears explosions but cannot understand them. A giraffe trembles at the sound of sirens. An elephant reaches toward a keeper who no longer knows where tomorrow's food will come from. Wars are fought by humans, but countless voiceless creatures suffer alongside them. In the early days of World War II, some European zoos quietly killed their own dangerous animals. Venomous snakes were destroyed, lions and tigers were shot, before bombs could release them into panicked streets. For many zookeepers, the war began not with soldiers, but with the unbearable task of killing the animals they had spent years protecting. Others refused to surrender completely to destruction. While governments viewed zoo animals as threats, burdens, or emergency food supplies, zookeepers saw frightened living creatures they had raised and cared for every day. Some slept beside terrified animals during air raids. Others hauled water through burning streets or stayed behind in starving cities to keep abandoned creatures alive. Their stories are not only about animals, they are about what remains human when humanity itself begins to disappear. 1. The ultimate resistance, the Warsaw Zoo. One of the greatest examples of courage emerged from the Warsaw Zoo during World War II. When Germany invaded Poland in 1939, bombs devastated the zoo. Many animals died in the explosions. Others were taken away or shot by occupying forces. The zoo's director, John Jabinski, and his wife, Antonina, refused to abandon the grounds. At first, they tried to save the remaining animals, but as Nazi persecution intensified, they realized another group desperately needed shelter. Jewish families trapped inside the Warsaw Ghetto. The ruined zoo became a secret refuge. Empty cages, underground tunnels, storage rooms, and hidden passages were transformed into hiding places for escaping Jews. Antonina created a system of coded piano songs to warn hidden guests when German soldiers approached. By the end of the war, the Jabinskis had helped save more than 300 people. Their story later inspired the book and film The Zookeeper's Wife. But the emotional power of their story comes from something deeper than heroism. The zoo became a strange symbol of humanity itself. In a world where people were treated like animals, the zoo became one of the few places where human dignity survived. The irony was painful and unforgettable. Cages meant to imprison animals became places of human salvation. 2. The cruelty of orders. The Ueno Zoo tragedy. Not every wartime story ends with rescue. At Ueno Zoo during World War II, fear and propaganda combined to create one of the most heartbreaking episodes in zoo history. As bombing raids intensified, Japanese officials feared that damaged cages might release dangerous animals into Tokyo. Authorities ordered the zoo's animals to be killed before disaster could strike. The order devastated the keepers. Many had raised the animals from infancy. Some elephants recognized the voices of the workers who fed them every morning. Yet the government transformed the tragedy into propaganda. The animals' forced deaths were publicly presented as symbols of patriotic sacrifice. School children were taught that if even beloved zoo animals could give their lives for the nation, ordinary citizens should be prepared to do the same. The most tragic victims were 3 elephants. Poison failed to kill them. Eventually, the animals were slowly starved behind closed doors, while grieving keepers remained beside them. Afterward, memorial services drew crowds of mourning children, carrying flowers and letters begging for the elephants to have been spared. The tragedy left scars that lasted long after the war ended. Because war does not only destroy cities, sometimes it teaches people to silence their compassion in the name of obedience. 3. Keeping life alive. In some cities, zookeepers fought not against soldiers, but against hunger, cold, exhaustion, and despair. During the 900-day siege of Leningrad, starvation consumed the Soviet city. Hundreds of thousands died. Food nearly vanished. Winter temperatures froze water pipes and buried streets beneath ice. Still, the workers at the Leningrad Zoo refused to abandon the animals. Among the zoo's most famous survivors was a hippopotamus named Beauty, known in Russian as Krasavitsa. A keeper named Yevdoksya Dashina carried hundreds of liters of water each day from the frozen Neva River to keep the hippo alive. She rubbed grease onto Krasavitsa's skin to stop it from cracking in the freezing air. But the bombs terrified the animal. During air raids, the hippo would tremble violently and plunge to the bottom of her drained pool in panic. Rather than hiding in safety, Dashina climbed into the enclosure and lay beside the massive creature, speaking softly to calm her heartbeat while explosions shook the city around them. Elsewhere in the zoo, keepers invented desperate survival techniques. Since meat no longer existed in the starving city, they stuffed grass and vegetables into rabbit skins soaked with fish oil to trick predators into eating. The work was exhausting and often hopeless, but routine itself became a form of resistance. Every feeding schedule, every cleaned enclosure, every whispered reassurance to a frightened animal became proof that civilization had not completely collapsed. A similar struggle unfolded inside the Berlin Zoological Garden near the end of World War II. Heavy bombing reduced the famous zoo to ruins. Thousands of animals died during the Battle of Berlin, leaving only a handful alive. Keepers searched through smoke and rubble for survivors. Some used their own food rations to feed injured animals. Others reportedly sheltered smaller creatures inside their homes, while artillery thundered through the streets. The surviving animals became strange symbols of endurance. If life inside the shattered zoo could continue, perhaps the city itself could survive as well. 4. The animals who witnessed war. Animals may not understand politics, but they experience fear. Bombs caused birds to stop singing. Sensitive animals died from shock during artillery attacks. Others developed strange behaviors after surviving combat zones. In post-war Berlin, surviving animals reportedly panicked at loud noises long after the fighting ended. Some refused to leave the backs of their enclosures. Modern scientists now recognize that animals can suffer trauma similar to human PTSD. The keepers suffered too. Many had watched animals starve, burn, or die beneath collapsing buildings. Some blamed themselves for not saving more. Others carried memories they could never fully explain to people who had not lived through the chaos. At Ueno Zoo, memorial ceremonies for the dead elephants continued for years. The grief remained alive because the animals had never been just animals to the people who cared for them. They had been companions, responsibilities, and silent witnesses to humanity at its worst. War scarred them all. 5. When nature returns to the ruins. Sometimes human destruction leaves behind strange sanctuaries. The Korean Demilitarized Zone, the heavily fortified strip dividing North and South Korea, is one of the most militarized regions on Earth. Yet because humans rarely enter it, wildlife has flourished there for decades. Endangered species such as red-crowned cranes and Asiatic black bears now survive in the shadow of landmines and guard towers. A different kind of silence emerged after the disaster at Chernobyl Exclusion Zone in 1986. Following the nuclear catastrophe and mass evacuation, forests slowly reclaimed abandoned roads and empty villages. Wolves, deer, wild horses, and birds spread across landscapes once crowded with human activity. The irony is unsettling. In some places, humans protected animals from war. In others, animals recovered only after humans disappeared. Nature proved both fragile and astonishingly resilient at the same time. 6. The Guardian Still Standing. The story of wartime animal protectors did not end in World War II. In 2003, the Baghdad Zoo became another casualty of war. Bombing, looting, and starvation devastated the facility. South African conservationist Lawrence Anthony entered Baghdad during the chaos and found starving lions, abandoned cages, and terrified surviving workers. Together with Iraqi zookeepers, he struggled to feed and protect the remaining animals. At times, even donkeys bought from city streets became emergency food for carnivores. Meanwhile, in Central Africa, the rangers of Virunga National Park continue risking their lives to protect endangered mountain gorillas during ongoing armed conflict. Many have been killed defending wildlife from militias and poachers who exploit the chaos of war. Today, similar stories continue in Ukraine and Gaza, where zoo workers remain beside trapped animals despite missile strikes, blackouts, and collapsing infrastructure. These modern guardians reveal something important. The duty to protect vulnerable life does not disappear during chaos. If anything, it becomes more urgent. 7. What the keepers teach us. History usually celebrates wartime heroes who carried weapons, but the zookeepers who stayed behind fought a different kind of battle. They fought against indifference. They protected creatures that could not understand borders, politics, or hatred. They chose gentleness in environments designed to reward brutality. They continued caring for living beings, even when the world around them insisted survival mattered more than compassion. That may be the deepest lesson their stories offer. Civilization is not measured only by military victories or political power. It is measured by whether people can still recognize vulnerable life as precious during moments of collapse. In the end, the keepers who carried water through burning cities were protecting more than animals. They were protecting the fragile idea of humanity itself.
It's time to study new words in context. 1. Venomous. Definition: able to inject poison through a bite or sting. Example: the venomous snake frightened the zoo workers. 2. Hauled. Definition: pulled or carried something heavy with great effort. Example: the keeper hauled buckets of water through the snow. 3. Propaganda. Definition: information used to influence people's opinions, often by a government. Example: the government used propaganda to encourage support for the war. 4. Exhaustion. Definition: a state of being extremely tired. Example: after working all night, the zookeeper collapsed from exhaustion. 5. Rubble. Definition: broken pieces of buildings or stone left after destruction. Example: the animals hid among the rubble after the bombing. 6. At its worst. Definition: in the most severe or terrible condition. Example: during the winter, the famine was at its worst. 7. Unsettling. Definition: making people feel nervous, uncomfortable, or disturbed. Example: the empty cages created an unsettling silence in the zoo. 8. Looting. Definition: stealing things during a time of chaos or disaster. Example: looting spread through the city after the fighting began. 9. Carnivore. Definition: an animal that eats meat. Example: lions are carnivores that need large amounts of food. 10. Poacher. Definition: a person who illegally hunts or captures animals. Example: rangers work to stop poachers from killing gorillas. 11. Exploit. Definition: to unfairly use someone or something for personal gain. Example: some militias exploit war to hunt endangered animals.
Comprehension questions. 1. Why were zoo animals in danger during wartime? Answer: zoo animals were in danger because bombs destroyed cages. Food became scarce, and some governments feared dangerous animals might escape into cities. 2. Why did some European zoos kill dangerous animals at the beginning of World War II? Answer: they killed dangerous animals because they feared bombs could damage cages and release lions, tigers, and snakes into crowded streets. 3. How did zookeepers view the animals differently from governments? Answer: governments often saw the animals as problems or burdens. But zookeepers saw them as living creatures they cared about deeply. 4. Who were Jan and Antonina Zabinski? Answer: they were the director of the Warsaw Zoo and his wife, who secretly helped save hundreds of Jewish people during World War II. 5. How did the Warsaw Zoo become a place of rescue? Answer: the zoo became a refuge because hidden rooms, tunnels, and empty cages were used to hide people escaping from the Warsaw Ghetto. 6. What signal did Antonina use to warn people of danger? Answer: she played special songs on the piano to warn hidden people when German soldiers were nearby. 7. Why were animals at Ueno Zoo ordered to be killed? Answer: Japanese officials feared that bombing raids might destroy cages and allow dangerous animals to escape. 8. How did the Japanese government use the Ueno Zoo tragedy as propaganda? Answer: the government used the animals' deaths to teach citizens about sacrifice and loyalty during wartime. 9. Who was Yevdoksya Dashina? Answer: she was a zookeeper at the Leningrad Zoo, who worked hard to keep a hippopotamus named Krasavitsa alive during the siege. 10. How did Dashina calm the frightened hippo during air raids? Answer: she climbed into the enclosure, lay beside the hippo, and spoke softly to calm the animal. 11. What clever method did zookeepers use to feed predators in Leningrad? Answer: they stuffed grass and vegetables into rabbit skins soaked with fish oil to trick predators into eating. 12. What happened to the Berlin Zoological Garden during World War II? Answer: heavy bombing destroyed much of the zoo, and thousands of animals died during the Battle of Berlin. 13. What is special about the Korean Demilitarized Zone DMZ? Answer: even though it is heavily militarized, it has become a safe place for endangered wildlife because humans rarely enter it. 14. Who are poachers, and why are they dangerous? Answer: poachers are people who illegally hunt animals, and they threaten endangered species such as mountain gorillas. 15. What is the main message of the article? Answer: the article shows that protecting weak and helpless life during war is a powerful act of humanity and compassion.